My name is Francis Holbrook. I am 32 years old, and last Tuesday, something happened that broke my heart and changed my family forever. My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, came home from her aunt's house wearing a pink bucket hat she had never owned before. She was holding the brim with both of her little hands, her eyes cast down at the floor. I knelt in front of her and tried to give her a warm smile. I told her the hat was cute and asked where she got it. She said nothing. I asked her to let me take it off. When I lifted it, I felt like the world stopped moving underneath me. Her beautiful red hair, 14 inches of thick, bouncy curls, was gone. What was left had been hacked into messy, uneven clumps. On one side, it was shaved almost to skin. On the other, it was jagged and rough. Just above her right ear, there was a 2-inch cut with dried, dark blood crusted along the edges. In a small plastic bag, she was carrying her own braid, wrapped in a tissue like a sad little prize someone had handed her to keep her quiet. She told me her aunt said her hair wasn't fair to her cousin Chloe. She told me her aunt had made her wear the hat all day long. Over the next 3 days, I did things that cost me my relationship with my husband's entire family. It nearly ended my marriage. It shattered the only large family my daughter had ever known. But I would do every single one of those things again without hesitating for even a moment. To understand why I made the choices I made, you have to understand where I came from. I entered the foster care system when I was 6 years old. My parents died in a car accident on a slippery highway in January, black ice and 3 cars involved. By that Friday, I was in my first foster home. Then came a second, then a third. Nobody was cruel to me, but nobody ever stayed either. By the time I was 17, I was on my own with a duffel bag, a high school equivalency degree, and one very clear goal. I was going to build a stable life for myself, brick by brick, and I was never going to let anyone take it from me. I worked the night shift at a gas station and went to school during the day. I became a nurse at 22, graduated from a state school with $41,000 in student loans, and took a job at a local hospital caring for sick children. I was good at that job. Sick kids don't care about your past. They only want to know that you are steady and kind, and I was both. I met my husband, Daniel, when he brought his sister Megan to the emergency room after she hurt her wrist. He was 25, tall, and gentle. He was even a little embarrassed about how he had parked his car outside. He asked me out right there in the hallway while Megan was still getting her arm examined, and I said yes before he could even finish a sentence. We got married when I was 23. By then I had saved $42,000, tracking every single penny I earned. I used that money to buy a small house on Ridgewood Lane. My name was on the papers. My hard work had paid for every inch of it. It was our home. Lily was born a year later with bright red hair that must have come from somewhere deep in my family tree, a place I will never be able to trace. Her curls went wild whenever the air got humid. She didn't look like Daniel's family at all, and his mother Patricia made sure everyone noticed that from the very beginning. When Patricia held Lily for the first time, she looked at her face and said the baby didn't look like her side of the family. I thought she was just making conversation. I was very wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. Holidays were always complicated for me. In foster care, holidays meant watching other families from a distance, never quite being part of what you were seeing. At the Holbrook table, I finally had a seat. It wasn't the best seat, and I usually had to ask people to pass the food, but it was a seat and I was grateful for it. Patricia wrote everyone's name on little cards for Thanksgiving. Mine always just said Francis, not Francis Holbrook, just Francis, like I was a guest who hadn't quite earned the last name yet. But Lily had cousins to run around with. She had a grandmother who bought her gifts. She had Sunday dinners and Easter egg hunts and a Christmas stocking with her name on it. I was willing to sit at the end of any table in the world if it meant my daughter could have a real family around her. The Holbrook family ran on one simple rule. Patricia made the decisions, and everyone else followed them. She was 61, had been a widow for 8 years, and kept her big house as clean as a museum. There was plastic on the couch, and you removed your shoes before you even stepped inside. Sunday dinners were not optional. If you missed one, she would reference it for the next month. Daniel was a younger child, quiet and dutiful. He mowed her lawn, fixed whatever needed fixing, and loved his mother the way a soldier follows orders, not always wanted, but feeling he had no other choice. Megan was the older sister, 35, divorced, and raising her daughter Chloe on her own. A few years earlier, she had lost her job and decided she wanted to build a following on the internet. Patricia gave her $12,000 for lights and cameras and called it an investment. She said Megan was a creative one. Megan's page had 78,000 followers. She presented herself as a perfect single mother, showing Chloe in matching outfits and writing about how gracefully she handled everything. People were kind in the comments. She made just enough money from it to get by. And there I was, Sunday after Sunday, sitting at the far end of the table, right next to the kitchen, as far from Patricia as the room allowed. She would ask me to fetch more bread, or remind me that the gravy was getting cold. I never complained. That was the arrangement I had made with myself. A family that puts you by the door is still a family. Patricia called Lily the redhead every single time. Never by her name, never sweetie or darling, just a redhead. The way you might describe a feature of a house you're thinking about renovating. I told myself it was a nickname. I told myself a great many things to keep the peace. Everything changed when Megan's numbers started dropping. The people in charge of what gets promoted on the internet had stopped paying attention to her page, and her sponsors began leaving one by one. She tried something new. She launched a series she called Cousin Glow Up, showing Lily and Chloe together doing their hair and try-on outfits. The first video pulled in strong numbers, but the comments weren't what Megan had hoped for. People kept remarking on how beautiful Lily was. They said she looked like a model and asked to see more of her. Megan began deleting those comments immediately. I watched her doing it at a Sunday dinner, without saying a word about it. After that, the videos shifted. Lily would only appear from the neck down or wearing a hat. Megan angled the camera away from Lily's red curls. One video showed Chloe sitting alone in front of a big ring light, the kind of image that makes a child look like a product. I told Daniel I didn't want Lily's face on Megan's page anymore. He told Megan, and she sent me a sharp text telling me to relax and reminding me it was just family content. Patricia called that same night to tell me Megan was hurt and that I wasn't being a team player. I went quiet after that. That is what children in the foster system learn to do. We go quiet so we don't get moved. That habit kept me safe for a long time, but it almost cost my daughter everything. The third video in Megan's series reached 40,000 views, her best performance in months. Someone in the comments asked for a dedicated video about Lily's curls. Megan sent a screenshot of that comment to the family group chat, and I mistakenly thought she was simply proud of Lily. I did not yet understand the difference between genuine affection and seeing a child as a resource. On a Thursday, Megan called and invited Lily over for a spa day. She described it brightly, face masks and painted nails and glitter. Daniel was away for a work trip, and I had a long hospital shift. I was uncertain, but Megan pushed, and then Patricia called right on cue to warn me not to be that kind of mother. Those words, used the right way, have kept countless women silent across generations. So I said yes. On Saturday morning, I dropped Lily off. The ring light was set up. The tripod was in position. I reminded Megan not to post Lily's face. She promised she wouldn't. And I drove to work with a feeling in my stomach that I chose to ignore. Sunday morning, after an exhausting shift, I was home when Megan's car pulled up. She honked twice. Lily walked through the door, wearing clothes that were too big for her and a pink bucket hat pulled low over her face. When I lifted the hat, I saw what had been done to my daughter's hair. My heart collapsed inside my chest, but something else took over, the part of me that had spent 10 years as a pediatric nurse. I went into what I can only call nurse mode. I did not cry. I took 11 photographs of the injury, using a ruler, to document the size of the cut. I wrote down everything Lily said to me word for word. I placed the braid in a labeled bag. I called my friend Dr. Elena Marsh, a pediatrician I trusted completely, and told her I needed her to see Lily right away. I gave Lily a bath, read to her until she fell asleep, and sat on the floor outside her room waiting for Elena to arrive. Before she drifted off, Lily asked me if she was in trouble. I told her she was the only person in this entire situation who had done absolutely nothing wrong. Elena examined Lily while she slept and didn't need to say a single word for me to understand what her face was telling me. She stayed with Lily while I drove to Megan's house. I was shaking with anger, but I kept my voice completely level when Megan opened the door in her pajamas and tried to frame what had happened as a little mistake. The girls playing salon. I told her that playing salon does not cause bleeding. I saw the scissors on her shelf with red hair, still caught in the blades. I photographed them and left. Patricia began texting me almost immediately, calling me hysterical. I did not respond. The next morning, Elena documented the wound at her clinic. Her written assessment stated the cut had been caused by someone applying force with dull scissors. She asked if I wanted to file a formal report. I asked her to give me 48 hours. I needed to know first whether my husband would stand beside me or beside his family. I called Daniel and sent him the photographs. He went silent. He said he would be home the following day. Patricia called and started sweet before turning cold, telling me it was just hair and I needed to stop manufacturing a crisis. I hung up. The extended family followed, texting me one after another to tell me I was being too sensitive, that I was an outsider trying to tear their family apart. I saved every single message. Daniel came home on Tuesday. He looked at the photographs, and his face changed in a way I had never seen before. He asked why I hadn't called him sooner, and I told him his mother had already been working to shape the narrative before he could see the truth. He was caught between the family he was born into and the one we had built together. I told him he had to decide which daughter mattered more, ours or his mother's version of the story. That night, I found a shared online folder Megan had given me access to years ago and had apparently forgotten about. Inside it were videos from the spa day. I watched the whole thing. I saw Megan smiling at the camera while she cut my daughter's hair. I saw Lily sitting perfectly still because she trusted the woman holding the scissors. I watched the exact moment the blade slipped and cut her ear. Megan had edited the footage to look like a light-hearted makeover, but stopped recording the moment the blood appeared. I downloaded everything. On Wednesday, Patricia called a family meeting with cake and coffee, already sat on the table. Megan cried. They wanted me to accept an apology, shake hands, and move forward as though nothing serious had happened. I asked Megan in front of everyone whether Lily had asked for a ring light, and a camera pointed at her face. Then I told the room about the video. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Patricia then made a threat. She told me that if I contacted the police, she would pursue custody of Lily on the grounds that I was unstable. She told me I had been nothing before their family took me in. I walked out of that house. Daniel walked out behind me. I called Elena and told her to file the report. On Thursday, I sat across a desk from a lawyer who told me that filming a child for commercial purposes without parental consent was a serious legal matter, and that we had more than enough to obtain a protective order. Megan had meanwhile gone to her followers and presented herself as the victim of a cruel family member, carefully omitting every relevant fact. The messages I received from strangers were ugly. I said nothing publicly. I was waiting. Friday night, Daniel told me he had finally watched the full video, every second of it. He called his mother to tell her what he had seen with his own eyes, and she told him he had no business looking at private files. For the first time, he was fully on my side. Saturday was Chloe's birthday party. 50 people attended. Megan was filming everything as usual. When she showed a brief clip of the haircut and called it glow-up, I stood up. I told the room the truth. I showed the medical report and the photographs. I told him about the video recorded for a commercial gain without my consent. Patricia began screaming at me in front of her church friends and neighbors. She said again that I was nothing. But the people at that party were looking at pictures of a child's bleeding scalp, and they were not on Patricia's side. A neighbor named Janet stood up. Others followed. Megan was crying, not because she was sorry, but because her story had just collapsed in front of everyone she had carefully cultivated an image for. The video of Patricia screaming spread quickly. Megan lost her followers and her remaining sponsors. CPS placed a formal warning on her record. A judge ruled that she cannot be alone with Lily. Patricia has been very quiet since then. Several of her church friends have reached out to me privately to say they are sorry for what happened. Daniel and I are in therapy together, working on what we broke and what we want to keep. Lily is doing better. Her hair is growing back slowly. She picked out her own headband at the store and took her time choosing it, touching several before she decided. She asked me if she gets to decide who touches her hair from now on. I told her always. I told her that word belonged to her completely. I used to believe that any family was better than no family. I carried that belief with me through 17 years of foster care, and into a marriage, and into a seat at the far end of a table where I was always just Francis, never quite fully named. I was wrong. A real family does not hurt a child for content. A real family does not hide blood under a hat and hand a little girl her own braid in a bag like a consolation prize. I am not sitting at the end of that table anymore. I am standing up, and I am not going to sit back down.